The Galactic Empire was ancient, vast, and unchallenged for millennia. To its rulers, Earth was nothing more than another primitive rock with an upstart species clinging to it. Their fleets had subjugated hundreds of worlds, and each conquest followed the same pattern. They arrived in orbit, broadcast their ultimatum, and watched as yet another frightened species bowed its head to imperial will. Resistance was never more than symbolic. Civilizations older and more advanced than Earth had shattered in days. That was the rhythm of conquest, and the Empire believed humanity would be no different. When their ships appeared in Earth's skies, the broadcast was cold and absolute. They demanded total surrender. Earth was to hand over its governments, its resources, and its future. In return, the Empire promised a place in their hierarchy, an existence of obedience under the eternal throne. The words were delivered with rehearsed authority, as if the demand were not a negotiation but an unavoidable fact. The expectation was simple: Earth would submit, because everything always submitted. The message was transmitted across every continent, every language, every channel. The Empire wanted to leave no corner untouched by its declaration. It wanted humanity's fear to multiply before the inevitable. They mocked human technology, calling nuclear weapons toys, warships antiques, and defenses obsolete. They laughed at the idea that a single planet, fractured by internal rivalries, could resist the sheer scale of their might. Their commanders boasted openly that if Earth dared to resist, the planet would be reduced to ash in less than a week. The Empire considered this spectacle an introduction, a reminder of its dominion, and a display of inevitability. But beneath the surface, humanity's reaction was nothing like what the aliens expected. The demand for submission was received in silence, not because of weakness, but because of calculation. Earth's leaders did not argue on broadcasts, nor did they plead for compromise. Behind locked doors and encrypted networks, the decision was made with clarity and finality. Humanity would not kneel. Every state, every faction, every corner of the globe understood that surrender was death in disguise. History had taught humans that empires never stopped with obedience. They consumed everything, stripped identities, and erased freedoms. For once, the divisions of Earth evaporated. Rivals who had distrusted one another for generations now shared one vision: survival through defiance. When the reply was finally sent, it was short, simple, and delivered without ornament. The Galactic Empire expected speeches of submission, but what they received was a single uncompromising sentence: "We do not surrender. Ever." There was no follow-up, no threat, no plea. Just finality. The arrogance of the Empire twisted this defiance into comedy. They broadcast their laughter across their fleets, mocking the audacity of a species that had not yet conquered its own solar system, daring to speak in absolutes. To them, humanity's words were bravado, the last scream of a prey animal before the predator's jaws closed. Imperial officers bet on how long it would take for Earth to be reduced to rubble. Some said a week. Others said 3 days. None imagined they could lose. But while the Empire laughed, humans moved in silence. Encrypted transmissions pulsed between hidden stations, commands flew across secure networks, and codes long prepared were activated. Humanity had no interest in theater. It had no intention of trying to impress the Empire with words. Every second wasted on argument was a second stolen from preparation. As the aliens celebrated their coming victory, something far more dangerous stirred quietly behind Earth's veil. The defiance of humanity was not loud, but it was absolute. It was not built on the illusion of strength but on an unshakable truth. Every human alive carried the legacy of ancestors who had survived endless conflict. To the Empire, this refusal seemed absurd. To humanity, it was the only path. Submission was not survival, it was erasure. And faced with that choice, Earth decided unanimously that it would rather burn than bow. The final transmission from Earth ended with silence. The Empire interpreted that silence as fear. They believed humanity had nothing left to say because it had already resigned itself to destruction. They did not understand that silence was the sound of preparation, the quiet before something they had never faced. They did not see that behind those words, the machinery of defiance had begun to awaken. For the first time in its long history of conquest, the Galactic Empire had issued its ultimatum to a species that did not know how to yield. It thought it had found another victim. Instead, it had called forth a response it would never forget. The Galactic Empire's intelligence officers were confident they had mapped humanity's limits. Their surveillance drones cataloged armies, satellites, and weapon stockpiles. They reported an arsenal that looked crude compared to the sleek and massive armaments of the Empire. Nuclear warheads seemed unsophisticated, fighter jets unimpressive, and conventional warships little more than museum pieces against the firepower of interstellar fleets. Their reports concluded that Earth could fight, but only in a desperate and short-lived struggle. The Empire's commanders accepted these reports as fact, not realizing how much had been overlooked. Humanity's strength was never displayed openly. While other civilizations broadcast their advancements as symbols of prestige, humans concealed theirs as insurance. For decades, projects had been hidden beneath deserts, oceans, and hollowed asteroids. Engineers and scientists worked under layers of secrecy so thick that even many governments did not know the full extent of what had been built. The world's conflicts had taught humans to guard their capabilities closely, revealing only fragments when necessary. What the Empire judged as weakness was in reality deliberate disguise. The truth was that Earth had been preparing for a war it hoped never to fight. Across the lunar surface, facilities lay camouflaged beneath rock and regolith, containing railgun batteries capable of firing projectiles at velocities no known shield technology had ever been designed to withstand. In the asteroid belt, entire mining operations had doubled as construction yards, forging warships hidden in the shadows of drifting stone. These ships bore no resemblance to the lumbering dreadnoughts of the Empire. They were smaller, faster, and designed with ruthless efficiency. Every weapon, every system, every line of their hulls was purposed for killing, not for intimidation. Human command did not imagine matching the Empire's ship for ship. It was impossible. Instead, they built for asymmetry. Artificial intelligence controlled squadrons of unmanned drones, each armed with warheads strong enough to cripple vessels many times their size. Swarms were programmed to adapt, to learn from enemy tactics, and to strike with patterns no alien commander could predict. Where the Empire believed superiority came from size, humans built strength through adaptability and deception. Even more terrifying was humanity's mastery of electronic warfare. What the Empire saw as a scattered planet of competing networks was, under pressure, a coordinated arsenal of digital weapons. Viruses designed to infiltrate alien systems waited dormant, prepared to corrupt targeting software, scramble communications, and even override navigation. In a conflict, seconds of confusion could mean the destruction of entire fleets, and humans had refined that principle to an art. Every nation on Earth, regardless of rivalries or past grievances, now poured resources into this hidden unity. Supplies were diverted into launch bays, orbital platforms, and deep space outposts. Engineers stripped civilian satellites of their sensors, repurposing them into surveillance tools for war. Factories that once produced mundane goods now forged munitions at full capacity. Humanity's adaptability transformed its economy into a machine designed for one outcome: survival through defiance. What outsiders often missed was the cultural foundation of this preparation. Humans had spent their entire existence locked in conflict, surviving wars of annihilation, rebuilding from devastation, and innovating under pressure. Unlike species that collapsed under prolonged strife, humans thrived in it. Every generation inherited scars that became lessons. Those lessons produced a mindset that no empire could replicate, a readiness to endure suffering and turn it into strength. Where the Empire had become complacent in its dominance, humans had become relentless in their struggle. When the Empire's intelligence network analyzed human broadcasts after the ultimatum, they found only silence. They assumed it was weakness. What they failed to detect was the encrypted storm beneath that silence. Command orders traveled through deep-coded systems invisible to alien intercepts. Strategic launches were coordinated in total secrecy. The stillness was not surrender, it was the concealment of mobilization. For the first time, humanity acted without hesitation. Petty politics dissolved, disputes vanished, and ambitions were placed aside. The threat was larger than any border, greater than any ideology. Entirely new command structures emerged overnight, binding leaders under a single chain of coordination. For the first time in history, Earth moved not as fragmented nations, but as one unified force. The Empire's scouts continued to report what they thought they saw: scattered defenses, unremarkable fleets, and outdated weapons. They transmitted confidence, completely blind to what lurked beyond their sensors. They had mistaken quiet preparation for paralysis, and that mistake would cost them everything. Humanity had made its decision. It would not try to equal the Empire, it would outthink it, outmaneuver it, and strike where no one believed it could. The arsenal was ready, the warships primed, and the command clear. When the first human vessels lifted from their hidden ports, there was no ceremony, no announcement, no warning. Only a calm certainty. The Galactic Empire believed it was facing another conquest. What it was truly facing was the sum of centuries of survival, ingenuity, and defiance. Humanity had not prepared to surrender. It had prepared for the day someone would demand the impossible, and it had built its answer in silence. That answer was now ready to be unleashed. The Empire moved with the confidence of a predator circling its prey. Dozens of capital ships descended into orbit, flanked by cruisers and escorts, their hulls gleaming with the arrogance of countless past victories. To the commanders aboard, this battle was not a battle at all. It was a performance, another reminder of the inevitability of Imperial supremacy. They prepared to unleash their weapons, certain that the display would end human defiance in moments. Their first strikes were calculated to terrify, not merely destroy. Plasma barrages streaked through the atmosphere, targeting power grids, communication hubs, and military installations. Yet, almost immediately, the efficiency of the bombardment faltered. Imperial targeting systems misfired, plasma bolts veered away from critical points, and detonations landed on empty ground. To the Empire, it was a confusing anomaly. To humanity, it was the result of careful planning. The decoy infrastructure humans had constructed fed false signatures into alien sensors, creating illusions of targets where none existed. Every wasted shot was a victory in itself, buying precious seconds for retaliation. That retaliation came swiftly and with precision. From the shadow of the moon, warships long hidden beneath regoliths surged into the open. Their silhouettes were sharp, angular, and devoid of ornamental design. These ships were built for a single function, and their first volley made that purpose unmistakable. Railgun slugs accelerated to unimaginable speeds ripped into the nearest Imperial cruiser. The kinetic impact bypassed shielding entirely, tearing through armor as though it were paper. The cruiser ruptured in a flash of fire, and for the first time in centuries, the Empire watched one of its warships vanish to a species it had dismissed as primitive. Shock rippled through their ranks, but disbelief quickly turned to fury. The Imperial Admiral barked orders, demanding concentrated fire on the newly revealed human fleet. Yet as their formation shifted, a second ambush unfolded. From the asteroid belt, smaller vessels, almost invisible against the drifting rocks, surged forward. They launched missiles laced with adaptive countermeasures. When the Empire's point defenses tried to intercept, the missiles split, multiplied, and curved in trajectories no algorithm could anticipate. Several connected with their targets, detonating with force that shredded hulls and tore ships apart. The Empire was bewildered. Its shields, designed to repel plasma and energy, crumpled against raw kinetic force and unconventional warheads. Their tactics, perfected over centuries, suddenly looked fragile in the face of opponents who did not fight within the expected rules. Human vessels did not stand in neat lines, nor did they advance in predictable waves. They struck from shadows, retreated into debris, and re-emerged in places the Empire believed secure. Each move was calculated not for glory, but for maximum destruction. Within hours, the Empire had lost more ships than in entire campaigns against other civilizations. Panic began to erode discipline. Officers who once laughed at Earth now scrambled to make sense of the battlefield. How could a world without interstellar colonies, without fleets spread across galaxies, dismantle Imperial warships so quickly? The answer was clear to the humans but incomprehensible to the Empire. Humanity's wars against itself had forged a mastery of conflict no empire could predict. As the fighting raged, a transmission cut through the chaos. It was not a plea, nor a declaration of victory. It was a cold reminder of what the Empire was facing. A human voice stated, steady and unflinching. "We learned war from fighting ourselves. You will not break us." The words carried across every channel, heard by friend and foe alike. To the Empire, it was arrogance. To their crews, it was a whisper of dread, an omen that this battle was unlike anything they had ever faced. The Empire tried to regroup, ordering a temporary withdrawal to stabilize formations. Their admirals swore they would return with greater force, that humanity's insolence would be answered with overwhelming retaliation. But the damage was already done. The image of invincibility that had held the galaxy in submission for ages was fractured. The memory of exploding cruisers and collapsing dreadnoughts burned itself into the minds of every surviving crew member. Humanity had done the unthinkable. They had not only resisted the first strike, they had inflicted wounds deep enough to scar the pride of an empire. The message was undeniable: Earth was no prey. It was something far more dangerous, something the Empire had never encountered before. The battle had ended for now, but the war had only begun, and for the first time in generations, the Empire felt something alien to them: fear. The Empire had never endured humiliation on such a scale. Their first clash with Earth had been meant as a demonstration of superiority, yet they retreated scarred and shaken. Commanders who once boasted of crushing resistance in hours now spoke in hushed tones, concealing the magnitude of their losses from the wider galaxy. Reinforcements were summoned, fleets far larger than anything humanity could field. The decision was unanimous among the Imperial Council: this rebellion would be drowned in sheer numbers. They would bury Earth beneath a tide of warships until no trace of its defiance remained. But numbers alone had never guaranteed victory against humanity. While the Empire prepared its overwhelming counteroffensive, humans refined a strategy not of strength but of intellect. Every weakness the Empire revealed was catalogued, analyzed, and exploited. The human command knew it could not meet an armada ship for ship. It did not need to. It only needed to dismantle the illusion of imperial inevitability, one calculated strike at a time. When the Empire's massive fleets surged toward Earth, they were forced into paths already shaped by human planning. Asteroid fields that seemed like natural hazards were seeded with mines and explosives disguised as drifting rock. Gravity wells were manipulated to interfere with hyperspace entry, forcing Imperial vessels into choke points where human ambushes waited. The battlefield was not chosen by the Empire. It was chosen for them, designed with meticulous intent to neutralize their superiority. As the fleets advanced, they encountered disruptions in navigation and targeting. Viruses hidden within signals had infiltrated Imperial systems, corrupting their software. Engines misfired, shields flickered, and weapons failed to lock on targets. Entire squadrons collided as confusion spread through their networks. The Empire, so accustomed to flawless coordination, suddenly found itself stumbling in chaos. Humans had turned electronic warfare into a weapon just as lethal as any missile. Yet it was not only tactics that shifted the war. It was the mindset behind them. Humanity fought not to conquer, but to endure, and in that endurance lay a ferocity the Empire had never seen. Every ambush was executed with the singular goal of inflicting maximum destruction before vanishing into the void. Human fleets did not linger. They struck with speed, disappeared, and reappeared where least expected. The Empire began to fight not against an army, but against a phantom. Each new loss rippled through Imperial morale. Officers who once demanded obedience now whispered doubts in private. Crews who had once believed themselves invincible now looked upon human warships with apprehension. Rumors spread that Earth was not a single planet but the vanguard of some hidden alliance, so devastating were their tactics. Fear crept into the ranks, and with it came hesitation that cost them dearly in every encounter. Beyond the battlefield, the impact was even greater. The galaxy had always seen the Empire as untouchable, a colossus against which resistance was suicide. Now, intercepted transmissions of destroyed dreadnoughts and panicked Imperial voices spread from system to system. Subjugated worlds, long resigned to submission, began to whisper of rebellion. If a single world could wound the Empire so deeply, then perhaps its reign was not eternal. Humanity understood the psychological war it was waging as much as the physical one. Every strike carried a message not only to the Empire but to the galaxy itself: the oppressor can bleed. Where others fought for survival, humanity fought to prove a truth larger than itself, that no empire is unbreakable. The Imperial High Command grew desperate. Orders became erratic, responses increasingly reckless. They deployed fleets with greater urgency, pouring resources into a conflict they believed should have ended swiftly. The more they committed, the more they exposed themselves to traps carefully laid in silence. Humanity was not reacting, it was dictating the rhythm of the war. For the first time in its history, the Empire found itself outmaneuvered not by superior firepower but by superior will. It had never faced an opponent that saw weakness not as defeat but as a tool. It had never fought against a species that turned every limitation into an advantage. Humanity's refusal to kneel had evolved into something far greater. It had become a campaign designed to shatter the illusion of imperial dominance itself. As the largest fleets yet assembled pushed toward Earth, the human response was not fear but preparation. The decisive blow was coming, and both sides knew it. For the Empire, it was an opportunity to erase its shame. For humanity, it was the moment to transform defiance into irreversible victory. The Empire committed everything. Its largest fleet in centuries descended upon the Sol system, a wall of metal and firepower stretching farther than any human eye could measure. This was meant to end the war, erase the insult of resistance, and reassert control over a galaxy already watching with unease. To the Imperial commanders, there could be no retreat. Victory was not only a necessity, it was survival for their reputation. Humanity did not respond with speeches or demonstrations. It responded with silence, the same silence that had preceded every trap, every ambush, every devastating counterattack. But this time, the quiet was heavier, the preparation deeper. Earth was not only defending, it was preparing to deliver a final lesson. When the first wave of Imperial vessels entered firing range, the void erupted with movement. Hidden fleets emerged from behind moons, from asteroid shadows, from cloaked positions in deep space. Entire swarms of drones detached from carriers, each moving with machine precision, overwhelming point defenses by sheer unpredictability. The Empire's formation fractured instantly as its ships struggled to account for targets multiplying faster than they could track. Then came the weapons the Empire had never imagined. From the lunar surface, railguns thundered, launching slugs with such velocity that shields cracked and armor tore as though it were fragile glass. Massive dreadnoughts, vessels that had survived countless wars, split apart under the sheer force of kinetic strikes. Missiles armed with adaptive warheads penetrated even reinforced shielding, tearing through flagships and detonations that left nothing but drifting debris. For every Imperial volley that landed, humanity delivered 3 in return. Precision fire crippled engines, shredded bridges, and silenced command ships. Coordinated strikes severed supply lines, isolating squadrons until they were surrounded and annihilated. What the Empire had always considered strength, the sheer size of its fleets, was turned into a weakness. Their mass became targets, their predictability became traps, and their arrogance became the knife that cut them apart. At the height of the chaos, a transmission pierced through the battle. The Imperial Admiral, his voice laced with fury, bellowed across every channel. "You dare defy the Eternal Empire? You dare raise your hand against destiny?" The reply from humanity was calm, stripped of emotion, and heavier than any threat. "We are not defying you. We are ending you." The words became reality. One by one, Imperial capital ships vanished in explosions that lit the void brighter than stars. The flagship, the pride of the fleet, fell to a coordinated barrage that pierced its core and shattered it before the eyes of every connected broadcast. The destruction was transmitted across the galaxy, unstoppable, undeniable. Billions witnessed the fall of what was once thought eternal. As wreckage scattered and survivors scrambled, the truth became unavoidable. The empires might had not only failed, it had been dismantled with precision and intent. For every ship destroyed, for every admiral silenced, the illusion of supremacy died a little more. The invincible conquerors had been unmasked as vulnerable, and the species they mocked as primitive had revealed itself as something far more terrifying. The remnants of the fleet attempted retreat, but humanity allowed no easy escape. Pursuit was relentless, cold, and exacting. Vessels that fled were hunted down, their distress calls left unanswered. The war was not fought for glory but for permanence. The lesson had to be engraved not just in this fleet, not just in the Empire, but in the memory of every species that watched. When at last the fighting ended, silence returned to the system. Where once an armada had cast its shadow, only debris and broken hulls remained. Humanity had not sought to conquer, had not sought to expand its reach across stars. It had sought one thing alone, to prove that Earth would never bow. To the survivors who surrendered, humanity offered no celebration, no triumph. Only a message transmitted across every channel, simple and absolute. We do not kneel. Not today, not ever. The galaxy trembled. Empires that had stood in fear of the throne began to whisper of freedom. Worlds long enslaved began to dream of revolt. The legend spread faster than any transmission could control, that a single world, a single species, had defied the greatest power known and broken it. The name of that species carried with it no plea for recognition, no demand for dominion, only a truth so heavy it could not be ignored. Humans were not warriors in the way the galaxy understood warriors. They were not conquerors in the way the Empire understood conquest. They were something else, something no one had ever prepared to face. They were war itself.